The priest, who was supposed to embody compassion, slammed the door in a stranger's face right under the pouring rain. The crowd stayed silent, but everything changed the next day when black cars pulled up to the church, and someone no one expected stepped out. This wasn't just a visit, it was a revelation no one would ever forget. But let's start from the beginning. St. Thomas Church stood proudly in the heart of a small Indiana town, its pristine white walls and gleaming cross a point of pride for the locals. Behind its doors, however, the church was less welcoming than it appeared. Father Gerald, a 55-year-old priest with a commanding presence, was known for his sharp judgments and rigid adherence to his own sense of order. He ran the church like a fortress, firmly believing it was his duty to control who could cross its threshold. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Michael Bryant, a tall black man in his late 40s, approached the church doors with calm determination. Dressed in a modest suit and carrying a weathered leather suitcase, he was soaked from the steady drizzle. Yet he maintained an air of quiet confidence as he knocked on the heavy wooden door. When Father Gerald opened the door, his expression instantly soured. His eyes scanned Michael from head to toe, lingering on the suitcase like it was an unwelcome reminder of something unseemly. "Good afternoon," Michael began politely. "My name is Michael Bryant. I was hoping to come inside and pray for a moment." Gerald raised an eyebrow, his voice cold and clipped. "Pray? This isn't a walk-in facility. What exactly do you want?" Michael, unfazed by the tone, replied evenly, "I'm traveling and looking for a quiet place to pray." "Surely this is a house of God?" Gerald's lips curled into a thin, dismissive smile. "This church isn't open for unannounced visitors. Maybe you should try elsewhere." Michael blinked, clearly taken aback. "This is a church, isn't it? Isn't it meant to be open to everyone?" The priest's expression hardened. "Not everyone," he said sharply, "and certainly not today." Without waiting for a response, he stepped back and slammed the door shut. The sound of the heavy door echoed through the drizzle, startling a small group of parishioners who had been chatting nearby. They froze, their whispers cutting through the awkward silence. Michael stood for a moment, processing what had just happened, before calmly walking over to the church steps. He sat down, placed his suitcase beside him, and pulled out a well-worn Bible. The rain continued to fall, soaking through his suit, but he didn't move. His quiet defiance sent ripples of unease through the gathering crowd. Inside, Father Gerald watched from a window, his irritation growing. To him, Michael's refusal to leave was nothing short of a challenge, an act of stubbornness designed to provoke him. He muttered angrily under his breath, convinced he was in the right. Outside, the scene took on a different tone. The parishioners, unsure of what to do, began whispering among themselves. Some exchanged uneasy glances, their discomfort growing with each passing minute. One older woman clutched her umbrella tightly, looking as though she wanted to approach Michael but hesitated. As the rain intensified, Michael remained rooted to the steps, his eyes fixed on the pages of his Bible. His presence was calm, yet unyielding, a silent protest against the rejection he had just endured. The onlookers couldn't tear their eyes away, the tension in the air growing heavier with every drop of rain. While Gerald fumed inside, Michael's quiet determination spoke louder than any argument. By Sunday morning, word of the previous day's drama at St. Thomas Church had spread like wildfire through the small Indiana town. Someone in the crowd had recorded the confrontation between Father Gerald and Michael Bryant, and within hours the video was all over social media. Comments flooded in. Some were furious, calling Gerald a bigot and demanding accountability. Others leapt to his defense, insisting that Michael's presence and mysterious suitcase raised too many questions. Meanwhile, Michael stayed exactly where he was, on the church steps, under the unrelenting rain. His posture was calm, his eyes focused on the tattered Bible in his hands, as if nothing around him mattered. But his silent resilience had an effect. Some of the parishioners began to murmur louder, their discomfort turning into open frustration with Gerald's actions. Inside the church, Gerald was pacing back and forth near a window, peeking out every few minutes to see if Michael had finally given up. But there he was, still sitting, still reading, still calm. Gerald clenched his fists, To him, this wasn't just a visitor. It was a direct challenge to his authority. He couldn't let this man make a spectacle out of his church. But the congregation wasn't on Gerald's side. One of the oldest parishioners, a woman named Agnes, who never missed a Sunday service in her 70-plus years, decided enough was enough. With her gray curls tucked under a rain hat, she marched right past the whispering crowd toward Michael. In her hand, she carried an umbrella and a sandwich wrapped neatly in wax paper. "You've been sitting out here long enough," she said gently, holding out the umbrella. "Take this. You'll catch your death out here." Michael looked up from his Bible and offered her a warm, grateful smile. "Thank you, ma'am, but I'm fine," he said. "This is just a test of faith." Before Agnes could say more, the church doors swung open, and out stormed Gerald. His voice rang out loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Agnes, do you even know who this man is? You don't know his intentions?" Agnes turned to face him, her posture stiff with indignation. "And you, Father Gerald, do you know who he is?" Her voice cut through the air like a blade, silencing the growing crowd. Gerald's jaw tightened, and for a moment he seemed to falter. But instead of answering, he waved her off and stormed back inside the church. The brief confrontation only fueled the growing tension. Parishioners and bystanders alike began whispering louder. "Who is this man?" someone asked. "Why is he just sitting there not reacting?" another murmured. A couple of young men, passing by on their way home, decided to approach Michael. One of them bent down slightly, speaking in a low voice. "Hey man, are you good? Do you need anything?" Michael simply smiled. "I'm fine. This is all part of the plan," he said cryptically, leaving them more curious than reassured. While the scene at the church steps continued to simmer, the story online was reaching new heights. The video of Gerald slamming the door in Michael's face had caught the attention of a local news station, and by mid-afternoon reporters were preparing to cover the incident. Social media users began digging into Michael's background, and strange details started to surface. One person claimed they'd seen him attending meetings with high-ranking church officials. Another said he'd once been spotted in the company of an influential bishop. Speculation grew, but no concrete answers emerged. As the rain continued to fall, the crowd outside the church grew larger, and the atmosphere became heavier with each passing hour. For those watching, Michael's quiet strength was captivating, even as the mystery of his identity deepened. And inside the church, Gerald sat alone in his office, stewing over what he saw as a deliberate provocation. Whatever Michael's intentions were, Gerald was determined to keep control, though control seemed to be slipping further out of his grasp with every passing moment. By dawn, St. Thomas Church had become the talk of the town, with its front steps surrounded by journalists, curious locals, and a growing buzz of anticipation. Cameramen angled their lenses at the rain-soaked stone steps where Michael Bryant still sat, his quiet presence drawing more attention than Father Gerald could have imagined or controlled. Inside the church, Gerald was pacing, visibly flustered, but trying his best to keep up appearances. He stepped outside occasionally, addressing the gathering crowd with his usual air of authority. "Let's not turn this into a circus," he announced, raising his hands in mock humility. "This is still a place of worship." Yet, the tension in his voice betrayed his growing unease. Michael, meanwhile, hadn't moved from his spot. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the chaos around him. While Gerald basked in the attention, assuming his position as the self-proclaimed voice of reason, Michael simply waited. The crowd's curiosity about him had reached a boiling point, and then, like a scene straight out of a movie, a convoy of black cars pulled up to the church. From the lead vehicle emerged Bishop Marcus, the head of the regional Archdiocese. Dressed impeccably in his ceremonial robes, he carried himself with an air of authority that instantly commanded respect. Behind him, several other clergymen stepped out, their expressions serious but respectful. The crowd fell silent as the bishop made his way through the gathering, his focus fixed on Michael. When he finally reached the steps, he did something that left everyone in stunned silence. He smiled warmly and extended his arms. "Michael," the bishop said, his voice ringing with joy. He embraced the man sitting on the steps as though greeting an old friend. "It's been too long." Michael stood, shaking the bishop's hand with the same quiet confidence he'd displayed all along. The other clergymen followed, greeting him with equal warmth and respect. The crowd erupted into murmurs. "Wait, who is this guy?" someone whispered. "Why are they treating him like royalty?" It was Bishop Marcus who addressed the crowd, his voice steady and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man," he gestured to Michael, "is my chief advisor and one of the most trusted figures in our Archdiocese. Michael Bryant has been instrumental in helping us navigate some of the most challenging decisions in our community." The weight of the revelation hit the crowd like a tidal wave. Gerald, who had been standing near the doorway, visibly paled. His jaw slackened, and for the first time he seemed at a loss for words. Michael turned to face Gerald, his expression calm but firm. "Father Gerald," he said, his voice carrying across the now silent crowd, "I came here not to test your faith but to remind you of what this place should stand for." Gerald stammered, his words tripping over themselves. I had no idea. If I had known..." But the excuses sounded hollow, even to him. Bishop Marcus stepped forward, his tone firm but compassionate. "This church is meant to be a sanctuary for all. It's not about appearances or judgments. It's about faith, humility, and love." The crowd's mood shifted. For those who had been angry at Gerald, seeing his humiliation felt like justice. For others, Michael's quiet dignity left an even deeper impression. Despite everything, Michael extended his hand toward Gerald. "There's still time to open these doors to everyone," he said simply. "It's never too late to lead with grace." The lesson was undeniable. Pride and prejudice had nearly destroyed Gerald's reputation, but Michael's forgiveness offered a path to redemption. As the crowd dispersed, the rain finally stopped, and for the first time that weekend, the church steps felt like a place of peace. What would you have done in Michael's place? Do you think Father Gerald deserved forgiveness? Or should he face stricter consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Let's start a conversation. Don't forget to like this story, if it moved you, and share it to spread awareness. This story was created to shine a light on prejudice and inspire change, making the world a better place for everyone. Your voice matters. Let us know what you think, because together, we can make a difference.